Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel.
Thanks for having me.
So, just to remind the audience, we are live streaming on YouTube and also simulcasting on X Spaces. If you have a question, please type it in the chat or join X Spaces, ask for the mic, and I will do my best to make sure you get your question in. In addition, please click the like button so we can grow this channel and share the links with your social media. In the description box, we have links that you can click that will take you to John's website and also to John's X page.
Yeah,
So please follow,
which is
subscribe.
brand new, by the way. I finally got it caught up, and the as the website is still undergoing upgrades, you will see things much clearer in this new page than the older version that's not cell phone friendly. So, and it's amazing. Some of my articles have 10,000 readers already. So there's
Great.
6,000, 8,000, 10,000. So leave some comments over in X too. I will answer all of them.
Yes, this is an interactive show, so please ask questions. So, John, as I do some of the admin stuff behind the scenes, take it away.
Okay, well, uh, yes, what do you, I'm a little stuck. We're just going to go ahead, or you want me to say?
Yeah, no, no,
Sorry,
no, no, no. Go. Yeah,
we're
go ahead.
beginning.
Yeah, from the beginning.
Take one. Okay. Boop. Uh, yeah, well, I'm since we did that show, one of the more important shows, 2 weeks ago on Sunday, the 14th, I think it was. Um, I have been expanding upon the whole issue of the shofar and the whole issue of Trump's relationship with Netanyahu and how things are coming to a head by doing a very expanded version of what happened with the history that looking at all the what I call now the one tap and two tap times that the shofar ended up not being blown because it was on the end of Friday at dusk of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, uh, and so it cannot be blown because you can't do efforts and things like that, certain things you can't do on the Sabbath. So I have gone all the way back to the early 20th century, looking at the whole Zionist movement and seeing its destiny and its potential fall from the times when these double taps have happened. And I've even discovered some even more amazing things uh, that I had more time to discover concerning the synchronicity that has happened between these issues. And I think from what our little talk we had just before the show, Paul, I are definitely going to additionally look at how I'm already doing it in political and religious sense, but I'm going to bring in even more how these times, these kind of biblical times of travail, are also have their travails in the economy, in things that are directly impacting us, in the weather. Um, I mean, I have been watching climate change, global warming coming since 1973 as I'm fully aware of its coming back then when I was a teenager in high school in the Palos Verdes, Los Angeles area. And I am seeing things that I've just not seen before. This huge pressure dome that developed over Europe was like a science fiction movie. It was the kinds of heat and I have friends in Paris that are relating to me what's going on in England, in Germany. They had 100 degrees in Berlin. They had 101. They got there was Rennes in Breton, which is more like a Pacific Northwestern climate, rainy and cooler. Rennes had 113 degrees Fahrenheit. in that part of Western France. Um, and now it's slowly moving. Now the Czech Republic and the Slovakian Republic and Hungary is now getting triple digits. Uh, and then I went back and looked at when these triple digits had happened before, and some of them haven't happened since the 70s in some of these cities. Some of them have happened, like Hamburg had stuff like this happening in, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But the thing that we're talking about is that we're also talking about how certain things that in a prophetic sense indicate a sign of hard times or troubles is, for instance, the weird thing that's happened to the Mall Pond in Washington, D.C., how it is now clogged with algae. I don't remember a time in my entire life, which is getting a little long in the tooth now, I'm 70. I don't recall a time when there was this kind of a problem where the mall's famous pond is now getting algified and not being able to fix that. Now, it's interesting because Paul was talking about, the signs like the bloody Nile, which happened during Moses' time and the seven plagues. I guess Paul, you were saying that there's some future prophecies that are saying that's returning.
No, no. What I was getting to the main point was is that the plagues represent a build up. One
Okay.
plague leads to another, that leads to another,
Yeah.
that leads
Okay.
to the ultimate conclusion of a society. But so I just find it I find it odd and reminiscent, almost. I want to use the word prophetic, but there's a rhyme to
Mhm.
what was happening in the Bible and the
Yeah.
times that we are in today, and that the algae represents an embarrassment to the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Now, Trump has this almost Pharaoh-esque aspect,
Very much
right?
so.
So this
If
algae,
only he could look like Yul Brynner.
yeah, yeah. So this algae is somewhat the reflective pool is part of the memorial for Lincoln. It also is representing the new birth of the country after the Civil War.
And the 4th of July is coming,
The Fourth of July. Yeah,
250-year milestone, and we got algae there.
right.
And
So
we got W World. We've got like bread and circuses on the back lawn of the White House. It didn't go very well.
back in the
WWF.
biblical times, the Nile was the life force of agriculture for Egypt.
Still is.
Right. So when that turned to blood, not only did it hurt agriculture, but it also embarrassed, this whole societal structure of
Yeah. Well,
Egypt.
it threatened it. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, hey, Pharaoh, you pray to our gods, you pray to the gods, and then suddenly the Nile goes red. What's the matter with our gods? It threatens religion, threatens politics, everything.
exactly. So it was the beginnings of a collapse of the society.
Yep.
So things rhyme in history, as you know.
And prophecy.
Right, right. So things rhyme. It's not perfect, but it rhymes,
Yeah.
and we can extrapolate out of that rhyme what potentially can be happening. And I sense that the algae represents a buildup of a series of events that are going to take place in this country that will increase the embarrassment and lose our hegemonic power. Now, that's my take on it. I'm sure others would disagree, but there seems to be a biblical alignment with what's going on and this curse that we're talking about with the Sabbath and Rosh Hashanah aligning in the next this year and next year.
Yeah.
There's 2 consecutive years of this, which is not good for me.
Yeah. Well, as I've been studying, I call them double taps in this
Right.
new.
Right. That's a
It's
good
like you
term.
get hit once, you try to come in to fix it, you get hit by a second missile from God or something or whatever.
That's a good term.
They,
So the reflective pool represents almost a life force of our republic, rebirth after the Civil War. A lot of uh, civil rights issues were discussed around the reflective pool in front of
yeah.
Lincoln.
Poor
So this
people's
is
poor people's town, the village that Martin Luther King set up that started to look at poverty. I had a dream.
right.
Martin Luther King at the Lincoln Memorial. Um, Many people, even Louis Farrakhan, tried to get the Million Man March there, and other things going on. So yeah, it is in the poetry of prophetic poetry, and its subjective significance because the objects are telling us that the subjects, us, are indicative of if we're not able, if our bridges are rusting and falling over, um, if um, if reservoirs in Southern California that should always have been prepared to have water in them during the fire season were ignored, and the mayor of LA, was off on a vacation and didn't really want to come back when there were those huge fires a few years ago that took out a whole a town near Malibu. And what these show is the same things you would see when the Egyptian Empire was crumbling, when Rome was crumbling, um, the ponds and the fountains of Rome getting gritty because people don't care anymore. People are not motivated. And I would also add a famous observation of a great 20th century mystic, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who experienced this firsthand with the collapse of 500 years of Romanov rule in Russia. When that happened, the Bolshevik Revolution came. He says there, and I'm paraphrasing, he would say, there comes for every once in a while, it happens to the common people of the world that they go through these cycles after many millennia. They go through these cycles where they feel unconsciously driven to destroy much of what was created over an era and just destroy it. Um, and this is, we're in that now. We've kind of been in it through the 20th century, and now it's coming to a head in the 21st century, early 21st century, where I see all the signs of it. You can give it a biblical angle to the ponds and the infrastructure not being properly taken care of. This whole idea that we're throwing money at our militaries. Now we want to put a $1.5 trillion budget, and our infrastructure is crumbling. And what's also happening with these failed adventures in the Middle East of the United States is the world is recognizing that we're not even a superpower anymore. We're a joke, and we're people who can't be reasoned with. We are a country. Our leaders are showing the world that we are a country that our writ on any contract, on any treaty, is worthless. And so it's not just Israel that's doing the same, and also in an end of cycle, maybe the Zionist cycle, and we're a part of it. We're sharing this debacle of military disasters. Iran is winning this war, and we just had a whole explosion of more violence because some of the ships were not following what Iran said they have to go through this certain process in the 60 days. We're 10 days into the 60-day part of the MOU, the agreement, memorandum of understanding, and basically Iran's been following. When Iran fired on those ships that were trying not to follow the rules, there's nothing in the in the memorandum of agreement that that says they were breaking it. And that's the thing, the incontinence of mind of our leader and our government that surrounds him. These idiots don't even know what they agreed to. They're not reading it, they're not absorbing it. And now there's been a big fight back and forth. Days have gone by, hundreds of weapons have been used, and tons of gallons of airplane fuel has been wasted. And we don't have a stockpile for this. Literally, if we keep doing this bit of fighting and then haranguing with treaties that go nowhere with the Iranians, and then bit of fighting again, we are literally weeks away from a crisis that there is not enough refined jet fuel. There's not enough. Our stock of strategic reserve, which has been draining, is now around 300 million barrels. It cannot go down to 150 million barrels without these huge salt mine caverns in the southern states. Three of them, I think, are where our strategic reserve of oil is put in. It can be put in a salt mine cavern because the salt doesn't interact with petroleum. But there's a problem. So here you got a big cave, and it's like this, and it should be around 700,000 barrels of oil. So it's usually all that oil is sustaining and supporting the architecture of all that salt that's a cave. But if you lower it past 150 million barrels, you actually compromise the salt cavern. It becomes the gravity, the oil's not there to help it hold itself up, and it could collapse, which means we may not have a place to put strategic reserves of oil anymore. So that's potentially happening. Our country runs on diesel for its trucks and its trains to ship all the goods and needs that we have. That is at threat now. Um, Trump kind of had a wake up and smell the brain cells you still have left moment when a few weeks back, 3 weeks back, I think, when he had the oil people sit him down and say, Mr. President, they were telling him what I'm telling you now. And he kind of woke up, and that's when he suddenly said, yeah, he did the deal with Iran. He actually surrendered everything to what Iran wanted, because in another month or two, we're going to not have enough oil and to run this engine of our economy. And it's probably the worst part is going to happen probably. We could probably stretch it out, but if we empty things out completely, it'll be right around the midterm elections that everything comes unglued. And so we're talking about this president, kind of for a moment there, certain brain cells were still working that were saying, oh, I'm done. I'm toast if that happens. And so but I knew he's so predictable in this way. I knew because I've been predicting his cognitive decline for years, that he would be the second one after Biden, who I also predicted for years, and nobody was really listening. And so what is now happening is that he is making this situation far worse. And so it's going to be a pretty volatile time. We are in an end of a cycle, a greater cycle than the United States. I mean, the United States had been. We've ended the first Pluto transit that I've talked about, which is a 248 years where Pluto transit all the zodiac. So it's a life cycle of the United States since the Declaration of Independence in 1776 to a transitional period where Pluto in astrology is moving related to the Earth and our position back and forth in our sky, which meant it did 7 passes back and forth, 27 degrees Capricorn, where the ruler of ages, Pluto, and cycles, was ending the age of the United States. The first age of the United States was ending and beginning again with revolutionary actions as it moves out of Capricorn into Aquarius, and accelerated by the return of Aquarian Pluto over the birth of the French Revolution, which is coming in 2034 through 36. There'll be 4 transits over that. So we're entering a time of revolution. And just as it often happens when things break down, the French food system broke down because of weird things happening with the climate, just like they're happening now, only much more than before. And these, where if a freak thunderstorm in 1788 going across central France could destroy the harvest of 1788, with the ultimate consequences happening by July 14th of 1789, people had bread that was too expensive to buy. They rebelled, just like people rebelled across the Arab and North African Islamic world when in 2011, a huge monsoon freak band of thunderstorms absolutely flooded Pakistan for months in the Sindh. But its counterweight was a high pressure dome over Russia that in 2010 um, happened. These two things happened. And in 2010, it was so severe, there were 500 megafires across European Russia. It was so bad, they lost, I think, a fifth of their grain production, which meant that they could not export for 9 months Russian grain, affordable Russian grain, because if they did, their livestock industries would, all the animals would starve. So where did all the Arabs countries go? They went and bought grain from, just like people used to be able in Europe to get cheap Russian natural gas, and now because America blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and to cut Europe off from Russian cheap gas, to force them to buy their natural gas in the United States at a price 4 times higher than is sustainable to keep a European society going like it is with its social program. It's, all the stuff that's high taxes, but it used to go to, that was enough to keep the German industries going and the industries of Europe. It was enough to keep this kind of high-end, expensive, but nice, where you get free Medicare and all of that. Well, now that's all destroyed by that one explosion in the Baltic Sea that we triggered under Biden, to basically force the Europeans to become our satellite, which is what empires do. There's hell hath no fury like an empire that's crumbling fast. The first people that it exploits the most are the people that have pledged their allegiance to it the most, the vassal states. They are like unnecessary children, burdensome children that are eaten alive by a dying empire. And we are basically doing that to Europe. And so yeah, I mean, these are the mechanics of how it all falls apart. And this is not new. It's just what makes this period different than any other before is every other situation like this was regional across human history. This is global. We're having a global shift where the global majority of the human race, about 7 billion people, are are turning their back on the West and all of its abuses, all of its manipulations of currency and wars. And we're turning our backs. The world of South America, um, Eurasia, even Russia considers itself now Eurasian first and European second. And Russia, European Russia, is 1/3 of the European continent. So they're facing east. They're seeing their destiny is with the east. They're the rising of China is another interesting thing that when civilizations, I mean, it's going to be a little controversial, but I have to say it because and that certain moral fiber, you want to see an empire that's falling is when it becomes filled with degradation, filled with libertinism, and unfortunately also when you see certainly things that were considered a mental disease requiring therapy, like gender dysphoria. Now you show a sign of this empire starting to crumble is that now that something that needs medical help is now being considered a right, a human right, that I think I'm a woman, therefore I want to be a woman. And if I do a cosmic change through cutting up my body in a certain way, I can now be the woman that I believe I should be. Well, the problem with that is when I have debates with such people, I said, well, you do look like a woman now, but I imagine you still have a prostate gland, which means you cannot be a woman. Sorry. And let me say that Osho, my teacher, had some so for some hope for people who wish to experience being one gender after another. He foresaw in the future that he said what's currently going on is butchery and a farce, a very tragic farce. And I know because one of my best friends tragically made this choice to become a woman, and it destroyed his life. And I know a lot of you out there who've gone through this gender transformation. I can tell you from the people I know, and it's always suppressed by the pro-gender people, viciously suppressed, that the vast majority of people who've made this transition end up feeling it was the biggest mistake of my life. And so, because but it could very well be in the future. I'm writing a whole novel about this, about a couple, a man and a woman, who went so deep into each other as man and woman that in the future they could, on a genetic level, transform human beings. So within a period of time, they could literally make your prostate disappear and your ovaries reappear. You would truly transpose, transubstantiate, if you're a man into a woman or a woman into a man. That is in the future. But this when unfortunately when in the people the future look back at our times, they will say, oh, what a primitive and terrible thing. All these people disfiguring themselves just to put a facade of a gender change, a taking drugs to more hormones to reshape the throat and reshape your knee bones and all of that to sound and appear like a woman. But it's an act. You're not a man if you transition into one as a woman. You're not a woman if you do the same as a man. That will be coming, not in this lifetime, not maybe not for 1,000 years, but it will happen someday. But it will not be guided by gender dysphoria, by a psychological illness that where one wants not to be a certain person. I have great compassion for people who have this psychological disorder, but it's a sign of the end of a cycle of a civilization where people start to pretend that and make it legal that you have a right to butcher yourself and do such things. The other thing that comes up is that a I have, first off, I have to say, I have a lot of gay friends and I love them. And I would say that a lot of my male gay friends, I love them because unlike so many hetero males, they are so much more generous in their affection hugging and being lovely. And so there's always a natural space for that. There's always, I remember I was just talking about it that this is going in an interesting direction, but I remember experiencing the stage that happens around prepubescence, where and this is a natural stage where you go through a period of a homosexual appraisal of things. I remember as a child, I was looking at all my friends, the boys in my playing with, and I suddenly saw them like as if they would be naked, and I had this feeling I never had before, really stirred some first urge of sexuality. And it's actually quite natural. I'm sure a lot of you boys who coming to men have had that experience, similar with women. And for most people, that's a stage that happens before heterosexuality. But in some natural ways, some people don't have that stage. They move on from that homosexual reality. And I would say in that case, it's not a disease. Not a choice even. It's a reality. And so, but when it becomes this kind of out there hanging all over, strange and lots of, well, the society gets threatened. um, I used to live in Capitol Hill, in Seattle, and we had the gay pride experience. It just happened. I haven't lived there for a while, for about 26 years, but I lived 11 years in it, and I loved it. And I'm not gay, so it's like, but there will be pushes to force a reality on people that and then you're expected just to say, well, this is okay. Well, it isn't okay for a lot of hetero people, but that doesn't mean there has to be violence. It doesn't have to be forced. I mean, people should have the freedom to experience and make mistakes or not, living the way they are. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to, because this is a delicate subject, is that there is in every end of a cycle of a civilization, one of the symptoms of it is that there's far more almost forced homosexuality. It's good. We all must be that way. Kind of forcing it upon the society, when if it was just left alone, it'd be just fine in the society. Now, I'm saying there's a fine balance with that, because some people have really persecuting gay people, and that's not right. But I gotta admit, it's happening again. Uh, Whether it's controversial or not, this is a sign of where certain, like, morals as we know them are going through a difficult patch where they're transitioning. And what is interesting, that's also happening with the rising powers of the world, the global majority, is that you will find, and maybe they're too suppressive with it, but this reality is reality. The new and rising parts of the world tend to solidify their respect of their morality and traditions. Russia is doing that. China is doing that. Where the societies that are declining are kind of unraveling, for better and worse, unraveling their ideas of what is moral and what is right and wrong and how people should behave. And and the West is definitely going through that, and Eurasia and South America and all that is wanting to uphold their religions, their faiths, their things. Um, and so they're on the upswing of that. And you know what? We did the same thing when America was rising. That it was about mom, dad, family, the family as the structure, going to church, going to synagogue. That was really in place. Now that's all kind of unraveling. So I'm sure I freaked out a lot of people just now, but you know what? It's good to get freaked a little.
You wanted to get freaked a little bit here. All right, so I went into Grok, did a little experiment again,
Yeah.
and I took a look at what verses come close to 8647. All right,
And what is 8647?
80. I thought 8647 was the number that the liberals are mentioning to assassinate Trump, isn't it?
8647. Oh, you mean August
Eight?
the
No, no,
6th?
no. What they 86 means shoots.
Knock him out. Yeah, we're
Right.
in 86.
47 is his presidency.
Oh, 8647.
Okay, so if I
Yes.
take
Okay.
8647 as a number,
Yeah.
and all of the Hebrew letters have a numerical value, one method in Gematria is to look for phrases within the Torah that are close to it or exact.
Oh boy.
Now, this is a large number, so it's hard to get an exact count. So Grok found four phrases or sections of the Torah that are close. All right. This is kind of freaky. The closest one is Exodus 32, chapter 32, verse 15 through 35. And that's when Moses comes down with the tablets and smashes them, and also dealing with the golden calf punishment.
Oh boy.
All right. The next closest one, talking about the first plague and the blood,
Ah.
and following short plague descriptions. That section in the Torah, which we had that conversation
We
earlier
did.
in the
I
video
can see I
because
just
of the
got some more work
green
to
algae. Green
do.
algae represents the blood, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next one, the next closest one, Noah's righteousness and the building of the ark and the early flood. So this goes with the climate change.
And rebuilding an ark to preserve something.
And the fourth one that comes closest to 8647, Yom Kippur service dealing with the scapegoat ritual.
The
That's
scapegoat ritual.
right. So there are two, I think they're uh, goats that are uh, sacrificed or not. Well, there's a ritual. Let's just say one is let go into the wild. I thought, and it eventually dies. The other one is thrown off of a cliff. And there's a, if I remember right, there is a cloth that's wrapped around the horn or wrapped around a rock or both. But if it stays white, then the sins are absolved. If it turns red, then the Kohanim within the temple didn't do something right, and there's going to be a curse. But I'd have to go back and make
Yeah.
sure all my facts on that are right. But the point is that there isn't a scapegoat. This is the whole.
There's where the term
Yeah,
scapegoat comes
it all comes
from.
from Yom Kippur. So
Oh my
we
God.
slaughter an animal or sacrifice an animal, and part of that sacrifice ritual is to throw it off of the cliff. But I thought there were two, and one is let go into the desert to die. But I could be wrong on that part of it. But a scholar would have to, we'd have to talk to a scholar about this.
Well, something beyond
But
Grok,
yeah,
something that's
but the thing is that there is a scapegoat ritual during the temple times. So Trump's 8647 number coincides with the golden calf, the smashing of the tablets, the plague, the first plague,
of
Noah's,
blood of the Nile.
and the scapegoat. And I'll tell you, when you all right, so that's eight. All right, now it gets even weirder. Okay, so what about Trump or Donald Trump in Gematria? All right. The closest we can get with Trump, just the number
Just those four, the
720.
TRUMP.
Right. So if you take the Hebrew version of that, it adds up to 729. The closest one is the binding of Isaac. All right. The next one is the Lord God of Israel, and the next phrase is dealing with the eternal covenant with Noah and Abraham. Then, if you take a look at Donald Trump, that equals to 845, and that will give you the closest one is, and God said, "Let there be light."
Hmm.
Now, what is the probability of a guy like Trump getting to become president and
Yeah.
literally his gematria is "Let there be light"? And
Well,
I don't see this as a positive thing. I see this as a negative thing because of potential nuclear war.
yeah, like the light of a nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be because it's either or, and let there be Lucifer hiding Satan
Maybe I'm
instead
just
of
playing
light.
games. Maybe I'm just playing games with numbers and making something out of nothing. But it's to me it's really weird where you take that 8647 and the closest phrase. It's not exact, but the closest that it comes to in the Torah is dealing with the golden calf. He represents gold all the time.
Oh,
When you think
it's
about Trump, it's gold.
and
Everything's
he's golden calf all the way.
yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's with Moses' brother making a big mistake.
Yeah. So I mean,
And
and
it
then
caused the 40 years of, wandering the wilderness.
right,
The golden calf. Otherwise, they would have gotten the promised land much sooner, but they had to purge out the entire generation of people that were responsible for that. And a new generation had to replace them, except for Joshua and Moses and Joshua's wife. Every who were pure and on the right side of God on that one, not with a golden calf. So they had to purge out basically what is a Baal god, Baal Hamon, you know, out of their Jewish Hebraic religion. And so for 40 years, what it reminds me of, Paul, is it's back to the other issue about, and I write about a lot about this, but now thanks for all the extra work you're giving me. But it's good. The the there's this process that's happening, and we've gone over this theme before, and I've talked to Ariel Zadok about it, and that long story short, this thing in 1948, this thing that Herzl and the Zionist movement, this path of Zionism taking Jewish civilization back into Palestine the way they did is not the way it was supposed to happen. And it will be punished. And it could require another diaspora. My God, already 1 million citizens of Israel have left. I mean, one of the reasons why the ones that remain seem to have 70, 80% support of Ben Gvir and all these monsters and Netanyahu are monstrous genocidal people, is because of a lot of the Jews that can't walk that path with their neighbors have left. Have already left. The diaspora is already on. At least 1 million Israeli citizens are never coming back. So, so it means a retribution is coming. A Babylon, it's coming, and the whole thing the Torah, as I understand it, talks about is that we were talking about that. Let's see, what's that phrase? I always have it here. The 215 years from now, there's a better time where the people of God will be invited to come back into the promised land. This time in 48 was a rape and pillage and a conquest about people that deep down Zionists, scratch a Zionist, and you've got a Bolshevik atheist. It's like a communist Hebrew.
Well, another way to look at 8647 is that 47 years with the conflict with Iran since the
Yes, this has been 47
all
years.
right,
It's
so
true.
86 could be war with this duration.
And in Kabbalah, 47 is dead man walking.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody who doesn't have somebody, there's other issues of it, but 47, now that he's no longer 46, I've written a lot about this. 47 means he's kind of like he's not there. He's a man without a soul. He's a man that's not able to communicate because he's cognitively declining. A shell of a man walking, it can also mean. But then again, as Trump is a strange medium that he is, sometimes Trump will say things that are absolutely brilliant, but it's almost like he's a channel of somebody else. Um, so it's like a zombie president would be probably a better English way to zombie president walking, a guy that is not really in control of his cabinet, who is a slave of the whim of the opinions of others. And he might have moments like he did getting the message from the oil people that this was going to be a disaster for the United States coming in the world. And it would be he wouldn't finish his term as president. If this thing happens, he'll be thrown out, and then he'll probably be put in jail, and all of his family will be put in jail too, because it's going to turn over to the Democrats. And frankly, I look at the Democrats as being as worthless politically in America as the Labor Party is in Britain. I mean, they dropped the Conservative Party. It's kind of a parallel what happened a few years back when the Conservative Party imploded and pretty much was out of power. And all that was left was Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, which is useless. And then there's this kind of thing coming up with Reform Party of that could happen. But when I look at this election, I'm starting to now get kind of feelings about this midterm election, and I sometimes wonder if, despite all this mess, that actually Republicans do better than anybody, including myself, think they will do, because everybody's attention will be on this is what you get. Yeah, conservatives made a mess. You want Keir Starmer? You want a U.S. Keir Starmer party? And he's just an idiot that just finally got kicked out by his own party. I mean, the mediocrity on the side of, I mean, a lot of the younger people from Gen Z that like to vote Democrat that voted for Trump, they're very disappointed with Trump and they have a right to be. But are you going to go back to, uh, Mayor Gruesome? Or this idiot that's been the mayor of Los Angeles that let a big part of it burn up because of the things that she did, and kind of
Right.
you know um, the Democratic Party uh, has no answer for you. What's really needed is a rebellion where a non-alignment becomes a party, where because this whole Democrat Republican thing is dead. And that's another thing that's going to fall away. And we could go a whole other show on that. Closer
Well,
to
when we look at that 8647, assuming 47 represents Trump,
well, it
86,
does numerologically. He is
right?
the
So,
47th president.
great. So,
And also 747, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 is also kind of a danger, a vibratory thing, like September 11.
right,
It's
right.
a, yeah.
86 is also Elohim, which represents God as the creator and judge. So so since I'm I'm telling you with
My Jewish part is saying, oy vey, oy
right
vey.
double tap double tap away they, but you have the
The double
double
tap.
tap going on with Rosh Hashanah, two
Yes.
consecutive years. You have this. Everyone's talking about the 8647 stuff, right? And it's like a hint. Sometimes it's hard to describe this. Sometimes in our plane, we will be reminded of something in
Yeah.
a dream, in some sort of symbology, whatever.
Yes.
But that we keep on hearing for several years now, 8647.
Yeah.
Also, 4547 is another one, which I get
Yeah. That's it.
9/11 from. All right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that 8647 could actually be meaning, uh, hinting that pay attention to this. Something bad's coming. You can stop it,
Yeah.
but this something bad is coming,
Yeah.
and you need to pay attention.
The symbolic language of prophecy. It is a language. It can be listened to or ignored. And there's so many different kinds of prophetic tradition that deals with this. We're dealing with the Hebrew right now, but there's so many, many ways that the mystery is trying to tell us something. And it is up to us to listen or understand. Because even prophets are, most of the time, I think prophets are just telling us what they were revealed. And that doesn't, we presume that they know what it means. And I think it's more like, no, I don't know what this means because it's not about my time, in some earlier times, but there will come a time where the people where this is supposed to be understood, they will know because it's not about us 1,000 years earlier. If you're talking, it's not about the biblical prophets. They are just the messengers. Sometimes we kind of think that the messenger has to know what the message is and has a degree in the message he's sending. And look, somebody just says, look, here's the message, go tell them. Well, he doesn't know anything but to convey the message. And so he asked him what it means. I don't know what it means, but that's the message, and I've been given it from the beyond, and it's up to you to figure out what it is and make it better or worse considering your intelligence and wisdom.
We do have John on X Bases. So, I'm sorry,
John the Apostle?
not John. I'm sorry. I'm tired. We have Don on X.
Don!
So Don, if you want the mic, I'll give it to you because we weren't able to get to you
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. So if you want to ask your question, if you remember the question, or if you just want to chime in, just let me know.
Lay it on us, Don.
But we do have someone typed in the text that they took a look at your Millennium book.
Yeah.
See, it looks like he picked it up at the book fair.
Yeah. Yeah, not it'll be the Millennium. Well, there's Nostradamus and the Millennium. That's my first book. And then there's the Millennium Book of Prophecy. Those are the two real starters. And there are so many things I predicted in them. First one was out in 87. The second was out I conceived in 1990 and was finally published in 1994. But there's a whole lot of amazing stuff, like a lot of themes that I've been working on for all these years. They started there, the idea of the roaring 2020s, the idea that climate change was not coming severely at the end of the 21st century, but somewhere around 2030, 2040, and many, many other things. The police state with a smile, all that stuff I started writing about in 1987 through 1990.
We do have a question here in the text. I don't know if you want to answer this or not.
Well,
What do you sense in terms of gold, or I'll expand the question in terms of the markets? Do
hmm.
you see in 2026 or 2027 as we go into this double tap? Do you see markets collapsing? And do you think that people are going to be moving towards safe havens like gold? Or are they just a false safety?
Well, the thing about capitalism, it comes from capital, capitalis. It means from your head. So whether it sinks or swims is dependent on the social contract of a bunch of people who agree that this idea can be made an action. And in this way, the Aquarian Age is, this is exactly what the Aquarian Age is about. For instance, it's not it's not that very complicated. Well, we'll talk about another form of gold. Um, um, the Bitcoin. It is gold made of math. Math becomes a rare value to reserve and then translate into currencies. And so um, it's valuable because it's so complicated, these numbers, that it only has a limited number of bitcoins that can be created. So that gives it value because it's if there was gold everywhere, no one would give a damn about gold, you know. But if conch shells were very rare, we would be basing it on conch shells. We would have an agreement on something like that. So there has to be a rarity that gives it preciousness. And what's purely Aquarian Age is Bitcoin. It is a new kind of gold, but it does not transcend the other reality that is an ancient reality that may come back again, and that is I think it's very likely, and I think you can see the Chinese and the Russians and everybody that's kind of in the BRICS world are buying up gold like crazy because they are already seeing the light that we will have to come back to a kind of gold standard. Now, and so it's always possible in times of chaos that the things that not only do structures that control things break down, but sometimes that frees them up. So it's possible that gold will finally be gold is like being sat on by a certain system of carnival casino buying and selling called the stock market, which is and the biggest mistake that Bill Clinton made was when he took away the wall that FDR made between Glass-Steagall, the wall between the fake economy that's a carnival economy and real things and things that are built and things that are made of real things like gold. And it was the greatest, what FDR did was the greatest streak of prosperity that the human race has ever seen, that Bill Clinton began the end of, and the end of his presidency, his second term, when he removed the barrier between the real economy that makes things and the speculative hocus pocus uh, casino carnival economy. And so now there's no the first thing that a good president which must do and a good government is bring back that wall. Make banking as boring as it used to be. And you have established, and when those walls are being put up in China, I mean, the whole way China is built is that no capitalist can become a leader of the Chinese government. And they said, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, we've watched you. And what you get out of it is oligarchs. You get Elon Musk, you get Donald Trump and his family, you get oligarchs. I mean, what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed is the difference between Ukraine and the Russian Federation is that when Ukraine became a free of being the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine and became itself a country, it had the population was 45 million. And it had, because Ukraine was a major powerhouse in the Soviet Union as one of its economic biggest bases, its agricultural base, it also had an economy equivalent in value to France as well as a population. What happened after 1991 is that Russia and Ukraine went through troubles where oligarchs took over power. And it almost destroyed Russia because they were doing is they were selling off the Soviet Union that was still part of the Russian Federation. They sold everything out, made a whole lot of money, and took all that carpetbagging from America, the so-called GMOs that were trying to help better Russia were just raping and pillaging Russia. And the same thing was going on with the GMOs coming in and the oligarchs being created in Ukraine. But the difference is one man, and it made the whole difference for the future society and where we're going. When Vladimir Putin took over from Boris Yeltsin, he started to deconstruct the oligarchic grip, selling off the Russian state for its own profits. That didn't happen in Ukraine. The whole Kolomoiskis and all those people that were they just have sold the country's economy before this war began was a shadow of what it was in 1991. They raped and pillaged their own people for their own profits, and it led the breakdown of society leads to civil wars, leads to the rise of fascism in Ukraine through the Stefan Banderites. I just learned that there, there's the belief that there are three kinds of Ukrainians. This is what was said by Poroshenko, who used to be a great TV host in Ukraine, but because she's Russian Ukrainian, even though she speaks perfect Ukrainian. There's this whole thing as, you're from Mykolaiv? That makes you a third-rate Ukrainian. That means you're a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. And then the other people there, you come from the central state, the oblasts of Ukraine. Oh, you're a second stage Ukrainian. A little too much Russian still in you, but there's a little more of the pure blood of Ukrainians. But if to be a first-rate Ukrainian, to be a part of the master Slava Ukraina race, you come from Lvov, you come from the West, because your blood is pure. The Mongols didn't mix with you, which is utterly false. It mixed with everybody when Kievan Rus was destroyed, and Novgorod Rus was a vassal of Mongolia. Um, and so this whole racial three-tiered situation on top of the abject corruption and of oligarchs running, Russia was going in the same direction, and Putin stopped that. Ukraine is now suffering the consequences, and it will. Now there's not even 20 million people in Ukraine, and right now even more people are leaving. They're having to go out and all these gangs are going out beating men up and dragging them into the army. You can't win a war if the people, and if you look at most of the soldiers of Ukraine, they're 40 and higher. Ukraine has even worse demographic decline than Russia is fighting with. And so it's very sad. It's a tragedy because I'm part Ukrainian as well, and Ukrainian Jew, and it's a tragedy for Ukraine. So I'll stop.
All right, Don, you have the mic, so you can ask your question or comment.
Yeah, there's the one thing that's interesting is that I find, and I guess trying to get your perspective because I'm trying to think through this. A lot of conversations going on about retracing conversations going back to the birth of this country regarding what is liberty, and some of the conversations that I'm seeing. Especially, I found out there was an Epstein article in which Epstein was interested as well and was working with a philosopher on being versus becoming. And I find this kind of relevant because I think people like the Santa Fe Institute were exploring trying to connect the sciences in a way that where they had become disconnected, I think in Descartesian terms, in the sense that they isolated, and they were trying to find a way to create a common language so there might be sort of shared insights. And so they chose Heraclitus on becoming versus Parmenides being. And I say this seems to be, and the funny thing about this, when I got onto Twitter, I was on a space on Heidegger on being in time, where I think Heidegger was trying to go back and ask this fundamental question again of philosophy of what it means to be. And I think this is sort of lost. I find like this question is so fundamental to trying to figure out how we are going to reorganize society, especially as this singularity unfolds. Because I think the technologists are going to find that becoming is more attractive, that we don't know what can be, and there perhaps is no permanence to being, and perhaps it's sort of mutable. And so therefore, where our rights come, perhaps our rights don't come from God, which you could say underpins a republic, but it comes in the fact that we could become our own gods, and therefore, where do our rights come from? And so it's a really fascinating conversation, but I'm not seeing it had in a way, because there's just so many distractions to get down to this fundamental question of being. Because if you can't define it, I'm not too sure what structures are going to be presented in order to create it, to organize society in a way that respects our individual choice.
Don, that's a fantastic layered observation, and let us where I'll enter into this very fundamental question of our republic and ourselves as existing is, with time definitions change, but the core of the definition doesn't always change. The Declaration of Independence, said, goes right out and says, or I think it's the beginning of the Constitution, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just declares this, this need to have a God, a being involved in a republic. Now, that doesn't just mean, God means a lot of different things to a lot of the Americans of many religions and experiences. To me, as a neo-Sannyasin, disciple of Osho, who lived in a commune in Oregon where we, like the Hutterites or the Amish or others, were a sect of a religious group, my experience of being is the source of godliness. That there must be godliness as a sort that would then help become active as a republic. So, so that ultimate truth, which some religions personify as God, and some more atheistically bent religions like Buddhism and Zen and other things, they see the personification as an impediment to the immediate connection of being free of a person, but a source of people rather than the ultimate person, God. And this is why I call myself a luminous atheist. In the Zen and Buddhist way of looking at things, that the debate can happen, you see, but the Republic doesn't have to sit on and criticize a person's feeling that God as a person, as a divine being, is separate or not, is a problem, because that, if we can all agree in that the being, that source, whatever you want to call it God, call it love, but if the source has, because it will in the world of forms, The source is not of time, but we find ourselves as part of being thrust in, who that never is born and never dies, by the way. We find ourselves visiting this world that is the creation of the God or the godliness, that is this vast creation, as they say in the Hindu world, a great play, a lila, that the whole thing is all the world's a stage, and we are the actors playing our roles into it, to murder poor Shakespeare's line from Hamlet. But
Yeah, life is but a poor player that struts and acts as, what is it? It's upon the stage and then it's heard no more. It's, yeah.
Yes, that's a rather that's it. But yes, but the so I think what's important in the future of Republic is to get it clear that people will define that mystery source of that eternal light that is timeless, never born, never dies. Whether there's a religion that requires one take steps and then have a judgment and then be one with that source, whether it's Emmanuel or Jesus coming back, um, or it's Kalki in the Hindus, or it's Maitreya of the Buddhists. Um, but the problem between those who wish to be and those who are into becoming, frankly, I'd say Heraclitus is the one who's into being more than becoming. I've just read his fragments that have survived the tests of time. That Osho did a whole discourse on it. He's my favorite Greek philosopher. Um, and he's very much sounds like if he was speaking that stuff in the Buddhist lands, he would be considered a Buddha, an awakened one. Um, so he's very unusual for him. They called him Heraclitus the Dark because it was very hard for the Aristotelian Greek point of view of things to really grasp what he was trying to say. But when you read it, if you're immersed into the scriptures of the rishis and the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Jains and all, it's like, oh yeah, okay. He must be a reincarnated rishi that ended up in Athens, in those days, speaking the ways of the rishis. And so, so basically, the the Republic is the becoming of the play that being must journey in this life in a political and well, also morals are involved. I mean, there's some attention to the Bill of Rights, which is the most revolutionary thing about the U.S. Constitution. By the way, the karmic return of a cycle with Pluto and Aquarius is a review of how our Constitution was made and how they managed to work it out. It was not easy, and a whole lot of people didn't even want a Bill of Rights put into the Constitutional Congress. A lot of people were against the Bill of Rights. A lot of people were against the First Amendment. It was quite a job to get that in. And frankly, even after the Constitution was signed and used, it was one of the first challenges against the First Amendment just happened a few years after. And as Judge Andrew Napolitano in a speech I saw him do in Kingston, so I wasn't there, I saw it in video, walked through all the ways the First Amendment was challenged to this very day. So, this is something so dynamic and interesting in our political process in this country, which needs a renewal, a second American Revolution, and a renewal of the Constitution, perhaps. And that's also possible. So there's so many things I could get into, and I think you laid it out so beautifully, but I try to answer in an atomic sense your question for now, with this coming back later in other parts of it. But it being has to be, everybody has to respect this divine source, whether they are into atheism or theism, whether they make a person out of it or not, an isness. That source, then the becoming is the labor in the play, in the part of God's or godliness's creation that makes forms, that makes them, to make forms require you make time.
Mhm.
The being does not live in time, is free of time. In fact, the being, the no mind fullness, is even free of existing or not existing. It's beyond even that. But if it comes visiting in a form and a group of people to make a republic, then it has to have a it has to have an appreciation of how becoming will cloak over that being many different identities, but that should be respected. That people who want to go to church to pray to an image of the Virgin Mary, or those who want to just sit in a Zen position and being just praying, do nobody but thisness, that they have a right and an obligation as a part of a republic to respect the rights and freedoms of people to find their own path as source born into becoming, which will be an ending at the end of their lives and going back to source. And I disagree with all kinds of religions, but I would absolutely fight for their being left alone and not suppressed. People people, that's something that has to happen. Uh, anyway.
Let me put wait, hold on, done. Wait. So let me just put my 2 cents into this
Yep.
really quick.
Yep.
From a Kabbalistic point of view, looking at Chachma and Bina, Chachma, wisdom, Bina, understanding. And when you dive into that, Chachma is becoming something like a thought, but it's not spoken. Speaking of a thought is being.
Yeah.
Becoming is the thought. So Chachma is becoming. Bina is being, because you've actualized. Now, also,
yeah, but let me just interject so you understand where I'm coming from. Mine is a deeper layer, I would say, is who is doing the Chachma.
Oh, well, the God.
And so, but I would respect
because
that.
the Chachma is connected to GETTR, and GETTR is this source that we can't fully touch.
Because you can't. It's the original face of the Zen.
Right.
You never see the original face because you are the face.
But here's the confusion that happens with atheism and deists, if you want, or individuals that are tied to some sort of religion. Is that they mix this up. They mix up Chachma and Bina and don't even understand the GETTR part of this. All right. So that's the Kabbalistic way to describe it. Now, bring it down to this level. Our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, it is reminiscent of Chachma and Bina. Our Declaration of Independence was the becoming. The being was the Declaration. Right. Right. The Declaration of Independence is the becoming, and the Constitution is the actual actualization.
Yep, it is.
So that's just my 4 cents on this. So
yeah, but and then our mother and father seed us, and then out of the womb we become this body mind vehicle, and just my view of it is that And everybody's view should be pursued to its
But,
ultimate
but from a
revelations.
Kabbalistic point of view, there is the Kab flow, and that flow is from the Godhead or
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't.
yeah.
It
The
just
Kav I'm speaking of, it all comes from the Kav.
right, right.
And the Kav is the very source of everything that is made into form and becoming. And from the Kav, we return to the Kav. And
Okay.
we are always now the Kav. And I would just simply say that in in the paths of self-observation, and it's always the self is being observed to see that which is the source of the self, and anything that is seen in the observation before it cannot be. The Kav is what the Zen masters called the original face, the face that you never see, because if you can see it, it's false. You cannot, it's a mirror image. It's not your real face. You cannot see your own face as it is. And it's a metaphor for the Kav is for the Kav.
Well, you have Ein Sof. All right. So you have Ein Sof, and the flow from Ein Sof, the energy force
Yeah.
from Ein Sof flows into each of the attributes of the Sephirah.
So the Ein
And
Sof, is
and so
that the, what is the name in Kabbalah for
Ein
for
Sof is
the
like
absolute source, the Yahweh source?
that would be Ein Sof.
Okay, that's what I mean. I don't mean Kav. I mean
The Kav is the
Ein
flow from Ein Sof. That's the energy force that allows for us to
become.
be. Yeah, right. And
Even being is a becoming.
depending on which attribute it is
Yeah.
in the Sephiros,
Mm.
depends on what metaphysics is happening.
Yeah. That's why I love Kabbalah.
What is being created. So all right. So all right,
I think Kabbalah for me is the highest
yeah,
form of Hebraic
it's like
teaching.
quantum physics of script.
Yeah,
But
it's remarkable.
yeah,
And it has so much, it's so close to the source understandings of some of the highest of many other religions. It's just in this beautiful, unique way, says it this way, and others say it another way.
yeah. So Don, yeah, you can continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I was looking at in this discussion, I think, is this sort of um, battle going on among, and I say this is again the Santa Fe Institute, which was pushing chaos theory, and this idea of entropy and what it might represent as sort of a ground state. So the idea of whatever our purpose is, because we seem to be able to kind of look at our own teleology to try to feel out what is the purpose of being, what is our purpose here, this constant reflection of it. And then the question is, if the purpose which we described in our Bill of Rights is to preserve idea of liberty, which is to be able to choose freely, that would be commensurate with being in the sense of something permanent. And that's I think the founding fathers are saying where our rights come, they come from a creator, and they're sort of in that definition,
Yeah.
something that's permanent in the sort of the habit of species of being a human. And that's where I'm going with. Now, on the transhumanist side, what they're pushing for is the singularity where we merge with the machines. And now in their path, say becoming in this merger with the machines. Now the machines, in their idea, if you talk to Kurtz on stuff, will actually become more intelligent than human minds. So in that sense, then what is becoming mean in that sense of the singularity, the direct in the definition of where the technologists are leading us in this merger with the machines, where computation essentially is now the transcendent property over sort of the messiness of human cognition.
Yeah.
It's
I saw this coming AI back in 1990 when I wrote the Millennium Book of Prophecy, half of it written in India, the other half when I came back. The I'm sorry to stop your flow for a moment, but there's I want to the what we call AI. I wrote about it as artificial enlightenment. It's almost enlightenment. It's a it's almost intelligence. It, I mean, what you described was in a marvelous way is a very apparently transcendental Dr. Frankenstein, who, with much higher sophistication, is not lobbing together dead matter of dead body parts to make Frankenstein's monster, but an even more subtle and therefore more dangerous Frankenstein doctor monster relationship. And I even said way back then that if people start to think that if the presumption of becoming its ultimate end, its ultimate danger, is that it decides that becoming is what it is, not being. It gets lost in the becoming and the changing. It gets lost in intellect rather than that which witnesses the intellect in the body. And the ultimate liberty, even Buddha's, even my master said, consciousness is the ultimate liberty, the ultimate freedom. Like I said, it doesn't even exist. It's free of that. So therefore, it doesn't not exist because it's free of that as well. But Osho used to say, and this should be in a future constitution, is that that you can only be as free as you're responsible for your freedom. Able to respond. Just let me finish. Able to respond to the situation. So freedom, so the freedom of the American citizen must have in writ the responsibility of the Constitution. Because you're only as conscious and free as you are responsible for yourself. And if you're not responsible for yourself, then you're not free.
I mean, I personally think that our mission as a country, all right, from a metaphysical level, is very reminiscent of the vessels breaking and trying to bring back those pieces into a whole form.
Mm.
So this is reminiscent of what Lincoln was saying about a more perfect union.
Yeah.
So this is why I keep on saying that the Declaration of Independence is Chokhmah. Bina is actually the Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and all the struggle that we have had is trying to make this perfect union, bringing up the pieces of the vessels to create this more perfect union. So now to get to something that's a little bit more understanding, other than this metaphysical concept that I have here, is that you have you are the problem with the artificial intelligence and the Kurzweil singularities issue is this, that they don't subscribe to the idea of Kav coming from Ein Sof. They believe that they are Ein Sof.
Yeah, this is egoism at its worst.
In the Sefer Yetzirah, it states 10, not 9, and 10, not 11. Meaning, this is a kind of a poetic way of meaning, there isn't the taking God out of the equation, nor should you put yourself as God into the equation.
Yeah, because
so the Singularity Institute and these individuals that are pushing what Kurzweil's pushing, and there's a lot of them, especially in the private equity and the VC world in California. Yeah. They're just wrong from a metaphysical level here. And so we're not being. So I suspect that if we get so close that there's going to be a merger between man and machine to the point where we're no longer a human being and we're a new species, there's probably going to be some sort of truncation of that technology. There's
Well, yeah,
there's
I
going to be
mean,
some sort of force,
it,
some sort of war, or some sort of
yeah,
thing that prevents that from happening.
like Frank Herbert and the machines, and when everybody rebelled against the machines, it's the
So,
problem is the fundamental thing of the singularists is that they are pure ego. They can't see that their ego is also a becoming. They think the ego is that center that
they
I'm
have
talking about. It is
ego,
not.
and they have a God complex.
Yeah, which
Combination.
means the
They
ultimate
want to be
ego is an
God.
ego who thinks I'm God
Yeah.
and you are not. And therefore, I will dictate how, and some of these people are even writing their own Mein Kampfs right now that are pretty disgusting and terrifying. These people are psychotic, as was Dr. Frankenstein.
Right. So if we hold the idea of this concept that there was a creation, there were days, whatever that means, of creation and a rest period, and there are laws to prevent the crossing over of species. There are laws of certain plants can only be planted, so many feet away with another type of plant to prevent cross fertilization, right? There there will be a point where the scholars are going to say what you're doing with machine and man is antithetical to biblical teaching, and therefore, if we're going to be wise, we're going to have to truncate this type of development.
Yeah. The Leela is source to the being, the play. But when one forgets the source and thinks they are the play, then they want to master the play
Yeah.
and make it in their own image,
When I
in
was
their own image,
yeah,
and it doesn't work. It is I have said there since the 90s, I've been saying there are three great dangers that are faced and challenges that are faced before us in this 21st century. The first two are not as dangerous as the third. The first is the thermonuclear war that could even nearly destroy the human race. We can survive that. It's the even greater danger is the sixth mass extinction that is heating up the planet. We can adapt to that. But if we think that our ego is the center, which is a more subtle becoming, then we are denying our divine spark and we will be destroying ourselves.
now to get back to what Don was saying about the Santa Fe Institute,
Yeah.
they had a lot of research, especially in emergence and complexity science.
Mm.
I even cited it in my dissertation. But the thing is that the idea of emergence, but that doesn't necessarily mean that emergence has to be in a godless environment.
Well,
So
in
so
fact,
so
if
what?
if if the egoists believe they're God, they're creating it a godless. They're creating a godless environment. It's false. It's not real. It will break because if you can try to identity, um, it's this is why I call AI artificial idiot because identity is the ultimate illusion where you believe you're separate from the whole. You are the whole, the source of everything. But if you want to be separate from that, like Mordor, he wanted to sing a dissonant tune when all the other beings in the creation, Tolkien's beautiful musical creation of Middle Earth and everything is, there's all these beautiful harmonies. And then here's Melchior who wants to stand out of the flow and makes these dissonances to the point when finally the Einar had to be silent and they spread out and just started creating things in that way. So in a way, Tolkien is saying, and God created Lucifer, and Lucifer became ego.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You know?
I think there's similarities to what Tolkien's saying that's actually written in the Zohar. But the thing is that when the Jews went into Egypt, into Golis, because of the famine, we're talking about Jacob now,
Mhm.
and he brings his 70 plus whatever, and eventually, they're living in Egypt and they become enslaved. What does Egypt represent? Egypt represented an empire of that time period. They had probably a technology that we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
But the thing is that at the point I'm making here, to dovetail into what Don's saying, is that going into Egypt led to slavery. Going into technology, going into this idea of, well, the gods, plural, are going to take care of you, and there is some sort of human manifestation of it.
Yeah.
It led to slavery and hardship.
Yeah.
That's what the singularity is going to do. And at the very beginning, it looks fine. Oh, Jacob's going in. He's going to be able to have food. He's going to be able to have feed for his crop for his livestock. Everything's going to be okay. But over time, generation after generation, it became worse and worse and worse until something happened where the Godhead decided to destroy that empire. That's what's going to happen with the singularity. If we, as a human race, we as a country allow for the singularity to happen, all right, there will be a time where there will be tyranny, and that tyranny will last for several generations, up to the point where there will be some event that is biblical that destroys that, and we will be freed again. But to say that what Kurzweil and the singularity is the end all and the correct path, no, that path will lead to slavery.
Well, in its very terms,
We'll have to have another Magna Carta and Declaration of Independence from Kurzweil.
That's right. And it's very much a very Aquarian Age struggle, because this is the darkest potential of the Aquarian Age, what we're talking about here. A police state with a smile that isn't even real.
And the reason why Kurzweil is the way he is, and he's done videos about this, so it's not my opinion, he said it, all right? He has a problem with accepting the fact that he's going to die, and he has a problem accepting the fact that his father died early. So this is a psychological issue that, because he's so smart and so many people followed him for the decades in artificial intelligence, that we're literally creating a slave state.
Dr. Frankenstein.
It's being financed by Wall Street.
Yeah, Dr. Frankenstein thought he was on to something. He just was not aware of his pride and ego. Even singularity it reveals where this really is at. To be single is to be apart from the whole. What he could see in the death of people he loved and needed is that he could only see the form as real. He could not see the eternity that these forms came from and go back into. And therefore he created this religion of singularity. The single is like, yes, there's this single body before you right here, but this single body, anything that is single will die. And if you cannot see deeper, then that is the ego dying with it. And if the ego wants to take over the world, it will destroy it.
I've bumped into a lot of VCs from California. I've bumped into a lot of VCs that are tied to Harvard. All right. Almost every single one of them that's tied into funding artificial intelligence has this mentality. They believe in communism, and they believe in this idea of that the body is like something that we should shed and we should merge with the machine.
Yeah, they're materialists.
They want to make a ton of money on it.
Well, of course, that's material, and they're into material.
Yeah. And Paul, look how right now, if you look at who's head of Meta?
Zuckerberg,
yeah.
look how he's being basically pushed into the UFC now. He's been a very unattractive person in terms of what happened, obviously with his, with Facebook, say, manipulation.
I never forgive him for shadow banning me.
Right. Yeah.
So
look there, now he's basically now at the UFC fight on the lawn of the White House, and he's interacting with the fighters. They're trying to reinvigorate. They're trying to reestablish a new identity for him, because I think what we're moving into now is the metaverse. So if we're talking now about just the material world, but really the next phase of where we're moving into, I call Fernansky, is the noosphere. That's the next battle of digital rights, about basically where you will basically be able to experiencing anything that you want. But the question is, are you experiencing it on your own terms, or is the experience being directed by something other than that you're unaware of?
This debate is on. There's already certain laws that are being considered right now about that, where it's not enough for these people to imprison your body, mind, but they want to imprison. They're the thought police. And
there's a reason why these individuals like Zuckerberg and Larry
fascism.
Ellison and all these big tech billionaires, and now we're going to have a trillionaire. But the thing is that the billionaires, there's a reason why they have to buy an island and have a compound that's underground, because they're afraid of an uprising.
Yeah.
Well, and Paul, this is where I was going with this, because again, I think I came in Europe with a bioweapons, development program, right. And I think the thing that to me seems to be moving at a pace in which you can't quite understand who's directing it. If we truly are allowing the technology to basically move at a pace undirected by any type of oversight by being, then therefore, they are coming perhaps with answers from the simulations that would direct them in a way that's saying, we're going to be developing technologies in which these energy density systems that we're developing, you could put something in the backyard of your neighbor, of a normal household, but at the same time, it could blow up the entire community.
Right.
So the question is, what is going to be overseeing the decision making of that person that now has access to the technology, and I, what I hear from John, which I agree with, you either go towards this radical individualism, which the individual will be constantly monitoring his own internal decision making to
his
make
own tyrant.
Or you give it up to sort of the centralized, and that's why I think Peter Thiel is talking about the Antichrist, because he says it's a system. It's not necessarily a person.
He is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
But he's trying to define it as a system, not necessarily.
Well, I think what happens in our system of government, because of the lobbying, the lobbyists are going to create laws that are going to protect their monopoly.
Yep.
Now, it's going to be the tech bros that are going to be part of this lobbying group, creating laws that will protect them. Some accident will happen. It will piss off everybody. And you know what? Maybe the next revolution won't be an American revolution. It may be something reminiscent of the French Revolution, where it's going to be a lot more bloody, and then it's going to erode our system of government.
Yeah, it's going to be French. And the thing to understand is that the American Revolution was kind of the incubator, but it was the French Revolution that exploded revolution for a century across the world. The revolution, the igniter of a lot of change, and it even did it through very strange ways, like the earliest modern fascist using the fascia imperial Roman kind of world was Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right.
But Napoleon Bonaparte, in a strange way, used his imperium to spread the ideas of the French Revolution in a way that even a democratic person could not do. And he had this very violent 12-year Napoleonic wars and exhausted himself in Russia and was gone. But what he left behind, almost accidental to himself, was that the only way the coalitions of European nations and the crowned heads could defeat him was they had to think and live like him. So in a way, his revolutionary ideas of the French Revolution was spread across Europe, and within a generation or so, you had the 1830 revolution, you had the 1848-49 revolution of the European Spring, and you had all this revolution and that led ultimately some dark ones like the Bolsheviks and the brown revolutions of the fascists, but it also led to good things too. So it's we're about to enter that cycle again, but now it's going to be, because of our interconnectivity, it will be a global revolution, sink or swim.
So if we get the singularity, whenever it is, some people predict that it's going to be coming in 2029, maybe 2035. Kurzweil's first go with the estimated year was 2045, whatever year, but let's say it's 2045. But when that does happen, we're going to have to reread our Declaration of Independence. And the main theme of this was basically, we are born free.
Yeah.
And that it is our absolute right to shed the yoke of tyranny. And if the singularity ends up being tyrannical on my life, it is my obligation and right to destroy it.
Yes. It will be the rebellion against the machines.
Yep.
Herbert was a prophet, but he wasn't talking about something happening 10,000 years
So all
from
these singularity, all these individuals that are aligned with the singularity and the Singularity Institute and really pumping all this AI stuff, what's going to happen is there's going to be a group of people that are going to channel their Caesar, Julius Caesar. They're going to march into Gaul. They're going to chop their heads off and put it on a pole, because this is not going to be acceptable to.
But
to
then
society.
they will get home, and Caesar will become a god. And there's a wonderful passage in the series Rome, HBO series Rome, where Caesar has decided he's going to be declared a god, and he'll be the king, the emperor.
Well, the reason why,
Mark Antony said, Caesar, are you a little worried that this might be hubris?
Right.
But then Caesar said,
yeah,
only if I fail.
Right. But the reason why I picked Caesar, maybe I should pick Richard the Lionheart. I don't know. But the point here is that you need a group of people that are saying enough is enough with this, and we're not going to allow this to happen. And just because there was a lobby group that was able to capture Congress to allow this to happen doesn't mean it's right, and that we, the American Republic, needs to fix it. Now, we can fix it through a peaceful means with laws, or we can destroy it.
Yeah.
But I personally feel that with everyone that I've ever met that was tied to the Singularity Institute, that was tied into artificial intelligence funding, they're all crazy. Every single one of them is crazy.
They're more than that. They're psychotic.
Well, okay.
I mean, some people can be crazy,
right. Well, okay,
and they can get over it.
All right,
but these people are
the darkest. But they're definitely not. They're definitely not aligned with our constitutional republic.
I would, if they want to make their little, Emperor Jones island empire, I would grant them the right, if they want
I see what was
to live in their own weird house, not in this country, but they can be somewhere else on their little desert island, trying to see who's the more singular than the other.
Right, but the thing is that I see this as an existential threat on our constitutional freedoms and our life.
It's everything.
Just as much as the bioweapon development.
Absolutely.
This is crazy. This stuff is crazy, and it should.
Well, as I said, this is the worst. We can survive nuclear war. We could survive bioweapons even, but this source of that is now trying to gain power. They are a becoming that has lost their soul. They've forgotten it. They've disconnected, and there's no good that's going to come from that. Only,
you know what? It's interesting because you were talking about how we're in this new cycle, right? The Pluto cycle and all this. We may have that another civil war, but it's not about slavery.
No.
It's really shedding the yoke of tyranny of
slavery
of AI.
So it's about slavery, but it's a very deeper, more dangerous one.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
The last thing I want to throw in here is this idea that we're a species of amnesia. And I go back to Plato's, what do you say, allusion to Atlantis. There seems to be, and we see all now with LIDAR, all these civilizations buried in the jungles or underneath the oceans. That, I find it fascinating that nobody, especially in the universities, want to recognize that there seem to be these catastrophic events that perhaps reset civilization. And the question I have, are we basically having the same conversation that the previous civilizations were having at the time of destruction? And that's a serious topic that I think should be have, but it just doesn't seem to. All of these whatever apocalyptic or Armageddon, all these civilizations buried in the jungle, we don't want to necessarily discuss exactly perhaps what led to their destruction. It's just sort of more of an interest, like a shiny object. This is just interesting. Well, really understand.
Well, the thing is, this is another whole world issue that I've kind of had it in my grandmother when I was just a few years old and just becoming cognizant of speech and all. She did something wonderful. She's a bit crazy, but she was a Rosicrucian and all that. My maternal grandmother from Hull, England, Yorkshire, lass, she helped me not lose the thread of what it feels like between lives. And because she talked about it at a time when, and I was open to it. It's like I've bumped into children that have been allowed just to go their own way with the mystery, and I've often sat down with children where they describe very clearly that, oh yeah, I used to have an old beard and white hair like you did. And I say, well, yeah, well, tell me about it. And because I also remember who I've been before many times. And so she didn't. I retained the thread. And the other thing that she did, at first it really terrified me and my brother, but she talked a lot about Atlantis and a lot about the story of Atlantis, a very powerful. In fact, a lot of people that written books about esoterica books like Montgomery and her books with her guides said that most of the people that are incarnated in America are Atlanteans, and they have exactly the same potential of blowing everything up. Now, there's a lot of interesting possibilities. Even one of the earliest things I remember is I was watching some serial, 1930s black and white serial, and it was showing the moment when the baby Superman was being launched off of Krypton by his mother and father, and then because he had foreseen the sun was going to destroy Krypton, and they wanted to save their son. At least we could do that as they're hugging each other and the world ends. And it really hit me. And it hit me in the strangest way, is that Atlantis may not be actually a myth, but it as well as may not be actually something that happened here. But when you consider how many civilizations are out there, or people entities trying to create, becoming civilizations across all the countless planets of potential, it's quite possible that, and since the universe is at least 13 billion years old, now it's looking like it's even older. The story of some planetary society or an island, like an island's in the sea, it could be in the sea of stars as well. That whole concept, I think, could very well be a collective memory. And the singularity thing could be a repetition potential of a civilization destroying itself, a planetary civilization destroying itself, and then those who all died in it end up being incarnated in worlds that have similar vibratory lessons to encounter. even if they're centuries, thousands of years before they finally meet that moment. But I think it's very possible the human race is a bunch of Atlantean souls that ended up starting all over again on this planet, and now we're reaching a Fermi's paradox moment where there are certain high priests of power that are so deep into their egos that they want to spread their artificial intelligence all over the world as a tyranny, as a singularity, and that kind of pride that can end a world is now having its moment to test us all again. And it's just kind of tested, I think, is another layer of the Fermi paradox that I don't think even Fermi thought about, is that this paradox happens again and again and again because this point and in the 21st century, it's very likely that this is a century where we either destroy ourselves and find ourselves being born, incarnated in other planets and trying to do that all over again.
I think another great observation is that most of the ones that are at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, they all have some sort of family problem. Either they're, they family creation or that family unit, there's something lacking.
Yeah.
Look at Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Look at Elon Musk.
They're screwed up folk.
Musk is going to literally repopulate when the world does
Yeah.
go into apocalyptic ending. He'll repopulate it. But he's like Noah.
He's Noah.
But that's a joke. But the point here
and
is
SpaceX
that
is his arc.
every single one of them that is at the cutting edge, they all have issues with that family unit. Every single one of them.
Which is a core thing. You sink or swim through the ups and downs of your challenges being born in a family.
Right.
It's kind of the first major gateway.
Yeah, go ahead,
Paul. The one thing I find fascinating, if you look at I find Henry Kissinger, right, always in the mix in terms of geopolitics. So, for instance, you have Eric Schmidt writing 2 books with him on AI, which I think you should take seriously, knowing Kissinger's influence on the world politics. But if you look at search in terms of epistemology, right, these people are literally in the intersection between computer science and metaphysics. So in order to basically, look at search, you must have like a sort of a system of the world. And so essentially they're creating a system of the world. Now the question is, in this digitization of all the information that exists, and this idea that even the financial system, the tokenization of assets, what is the system of the world that they're producing in this digitization of this analog? And then the question is, if the analog no longer comports with the digitization world model, then they might basically distort the information or the history of what was narrated by a person, right? So you can start to see this it's something that I don't think people are really taking seriously. I started collecting books because this guy Brian Rommel is basically on a war path to try to save all of like VHS, any type of
very important.
But I'm started collecting medical books, which you might find interesting, Paul. They're completely different than what's being, and even in the medical books, there's actually sort of a system of the world in which the way that they present the information, which I thought was fascinating. So it's the search and Google and this digitization of the world, and then constructing essentially an atlas or a framework. The question is, who's going to define the framework that we're all agreed upon is how we're going to interact with one another?
Just one thing. It's like, if you notice how it's probably going to happen to me soon, but it's happening to a lot of my sources. They start to sound a little different and make these certain moves. And then they talk like this, and the lips are not quite working right, a little more looking. And then they do this and go, and then their gestures come at the wrong time. And it's like literally this singularity to fight this stuff would like to literally change reality change becoming realities in people, and the ultimate propaganda where you become the propaganda. Go ahead.
I just, just being a Gen Xer, the best decade was the 80s. And everything past the 80s went downhill. What I meant by that is that in the 80s, Gen Xers had one foot in the real world, and it was the beginnings of personal computers,
Mm.
right? So Apple II comes out, you had Commodore 64, you had Atari, right? So but you still went outside and played ball.
Yeah.
You still rode your bike. You
Yeah.
still interacted in the real world.
Yeah.
Today, children are taught differently.
Yeah.
Children's experiences are different, and not for the better. It's
No.
worse.
It's worse. Can I just tell you one instance about what happened during COVID with everybody masked up?
Yeah.
Children look at the facial features, right? So there are thousands of emotional cues that are transmitted just in the faces that children pick up on. Well, those children were essentially devoid of those type of facial sort of interactions in order to basically develop emotional intelligence. So, and if you ever interact with a child, it's like looking and trying to understand your facial features. You can make goofy features and they smile and so forth. Well, so the question is, if you're developing essentially a conformist society, right? And what you found during COVID with all the lockdowns and so forth and the masking and so forth, it was a test.
Oh, I tell you, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. I'll never forget this kid who was like 4 and with the wisdom and intelligence of a 4-year-old, and the mom's trying to say, you got to put on this mask. But I don't like these masks. I can't see anybody. I can't. He was and no, you have to wear the mask. But why? I feel trapped, and I can't see what people. He was like talking about. Then everybody's going to be like a spook.
And to your point, I always see the children in the sense they're most connected to the divine because they're not perverted by any type of narrative.
Yeah.
Right. They're just seeing joy. And then they're just devoid of the joy of interacting with someone who basically sees the joy of the child. So it's just the whole thing is just and by the way, I talk to teachers. They're seeing a drop in IQs that happened during COVID.
Oh, big.
So not only just a drop in IQ, but also sort of this conformity. And this perhaps the development of sort of antisocial behavior that happened with the children that came out of that.
Metropolis. It's Fritz Lang's Metropolis, everybody. It was a test. They exploited the situation, and unfortunately, this is the challenges of the Aquarian Age, especially as it's interfacing with the dying centralization of the Piscean Age. These singularists and all are really in a desperate attempt to hold on to the dying Piscean Age, which in its heyday centralized everything, religions, power grids, freeways. It was all about connectivity and centralizing. The Aquarian Age in the next century is this revolution will be happening or not, is about decentralizing everything the Piscean Age centralized. Ultimately to the point where 150 years from now, the ultimate goal of the Aquarian Age is the paradox of groups and masses of people in Aquarius in the age who are all sovereign individuals. And therefore, being sovereign individuals, they are the best people capable to live in community with other sovereign individuals. That's the political and social future in a nutshell of what the Aquarian Age is all about. And there's that part of those folks that what's such a perversion is that a lot of people who are dabbling into the science of the Aquarian Age are coming from a space that's very Piscean Age that wants to control everybody and centralize everything like the Piscean Age did. And it's now better because it's not just faith now. I can just turn you in a singularity into a believer of what I believe, and such a perversion of the. I mean, the centralization had its needs in the evolutionary collective advancement of human beings, but the Aquarian Age is going to dismantle all of that, and these people are the fighting against it. These singularists, they're fighting against it, and hopefully they will not succeed.
John, can I ask you one question on this? Which I was just down in Washington D.C. and I saw at the Library of Congress. Um, it's a Neptune. What is the Greek name? Why am I drawing a blank?
Poseidon.
Poseidon coming out of the waters. This is in front of the Library of Congress.
Mm.
And I just find it fascinating, this idea of something coming out of the water, whether, you go back to St. George, killing the sea dragon, or St. Michael, even back to Perseus, which you could go back to the Iran. It's this
Kraken.
Something coming out of the water. And I saw why is it that we have a pagan god, Poseidon, coming out of the water in front of the Library of Congress, which you could argue is essentially where this information that would lead to sort of this scientific, there's these deist people like Jefferson who came from the Enlightenment, with seeing this information as being fundamental, but yet it's Poseidon who's in front of it.
Well, the Enlightenment is the child of the Renaissance. That was kind of the love of classical wisdom. The Dark Ages had erased that from the mindset. And talk about a big COVID moment when it comes to culture. The Dark Ages was the mask over all the beautiful knowledge and experience and enlightenment of the classical age of Rome and the Hellenistic Greek period and all of that. And fortunately, the monks in the middle of the Dark Ages, and especially the Arabs, who had a golden age during all of that, once Muhammad had kind of united them in one religion with one tongue. This was the time when algebra was being created, when we were in mud huts in Europe. Arabs were having their Renaissance, and the Arab literature was remarkable. They also translated all the classical things in Arabic, and then eventually a lot of people learned Arabic to translate it to the different languages of, well, Latin. And what basically, long story short, is the blundering crusaders, Richard the Lionhearted and all those folks who blundered into the Crusades, actually by accident discovered the advancements of the Arab world and brought them back into a renaissance, a resurgence of knowledge of the classics, the myths and all of that has become a very important element that has lasted and flowered in a deeper sense during the Enlightenment, which happened centuries later. So that's why Poseidon is there. That's why, because Poseidon is also the messenger of not only the oceanic, but because of tsunamis, Poseidon is also called the god of earthquakes.
Well, I was looking at, I don't know if there's any connection you might be able to ascertain from Pluto, his connection to Pluto. But the one thing is it Pluto he's associated with, or Neptune? It would have been Neptune.
Pluto is the lord of the underworld.
Yeah, that would be underworld. Yes, I'm sorry. It would have been Neptune. My question to you is, where I was going with this, is there seems to be something that comes out of the ocean that resets civilization. So when we say this big thing like reset,
life comes out of the ocean. All life came out of the ocean.
I'm saying that Poseidon would be someone that would have come out of the ocean to reset civilization. And I only say that, and I'm seeing among a lot of my threads that they talk about these people, like you said, like Saint Germain, you mentioned about these people, the Atlanteans, that say happen to be in the time that they're constructing the Constitution and so forth. But there seemed to be something that people talk about, these figures that come out of the oceans that help reset civilization on these
Well,
cities.
the Fishman. The Fishman. Well, there were prophecies at the beginning of the Piscean Age that the great teacher of the Piscean Age would be called the Fishman. And Pisces is fish. And it's interesting that before the cross was later adopted as the Christian symbol, the symbol of Christianity was a fish. Fisherman, the fisherman. He would be like a fisherman. And of course, he had his main disciple, Peter, Simon Peter, who became the fisherman of souls. So, this very classic Piscean age, the fact that the Aquarian age has seen the onset of science, not an age of faith and belief, but an age of knowing. To not just a qualified faith, not knowing, trusting, but to know a reality is a reality.
Well, see, John, I'm actually.
But it's getting late. Paul needs to go to bed soon, and so I.
Hey, John,
and since I'm older than him, it's time for his bedtime because I'm in the Pacific Standard Zone here, so I still got a few hours. But I just.
Can I agree with you, John? Quick thing before you go to bed. I agree. I'm now starting.
Well, I'm not going to bed. I'm in several hours now.
No, I'm actually agreeing with you, and I actually appreciate your insight here because I kind of think that you're describing this control grid that came out and reset this last civilization. Let's just say the Atlantean, which has basically been referenced recently by Graham Hancock, that whatever came out of the erosion never was going to create a resetting that would be commensurate with individual sovereignty, but would basically just was sort of continued this control grid mechanism. And now that they've reached this point, whatever it is that they were allowing us to discover that would help them in their control, now we're at a point where we might be able to recognize this Piscean sort of control grid, and we can break free of it if we can actually discover who it is that's actually.
Otherwise, Don, we drown like Atlantis in the Piscean Oceanic of a bygone age and do not meet the Aquarian age, which is something completely individualized and different.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I have to rethink everything.
Thank you, Don. It was wonderful. I rarely get these kinds of conversations. It's wonderful. Thank you.
All right, so we are near the end here. So, John, if you don't mind, just explain shortly to the audience how they can sign up for your periodicals and do a reading.
Well, you can go to my X channel, and there's links at the beginning of each article and also at the end before we go into the samples of some of the other articles that happen in that Hogue Prophecy Report. I always start with a long 1 or 2 or even 3 articles for free, and then just click on the link that you'll see the options that are available. Click on the link, and you can become a 12-month for $60, or you can do a one-time and for $5 or a little more, just when you can afford to see some of these bulletins. I'm working on the next one right now for early July's publication. And you can also be an automatic pair where you $5 or a little more, you get set up, and the link will take you from my website to my PayPal page for purchasing and donations. And that's it'd be great if you guys help me out, because you will only see me in this house over my head if more and more of you can give something to keep, if you can, to keep these talks coming. And if you read me, it goes even deeper in things that go on, because I have the time to really break it down as well. So help support us with your financial support, whatever you can give. And thank you for watching this, and thank all of you who have yet to watch this in reruns in advance, for letting letting us share our time and insights with you in your time. And thank you.
And I just want to remind everybody, in the description of this video and all the videos I do with John, you can get to the links that will take you to his website and his X page. So please click those links, and also share the videos. Ask your social media to follow us so we can grow this show. We want it to be interactive. Today was really
Yeah, it was great.
cool, and everything is unplanned. So I like it.
And also, if you want a private reading, there's also a link there that you can get a private reading from me, and you can spare 3 hours. You could have 3 hours just you and me talking about the future, looking at tarot, looking at astrology, and talk about your own life and things you want to see, you dream about, what you want to see happen. And I'll be here to help facilitate that, give you insights and seeds to grow with.
All right. So thank you for watching, everybody. I will replay the show on all my channels tomorrow. So please share the links. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate if you can ask your social media to help follow us. Yeah. So, John, say
goodbye, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody.